right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If you've been tuning in this week, you know that it is World Ocean Week, and we've partnered up with the Explorers Club for an incredible series of live events with ocean explorers and researchers, scientists, and conservationists from all around the world, sharing their stories and the important work they're doing, researching, documenting, and protecting our ocean. So yesterday was a blast. We started off with the deep sea with some amazing events. You can find a playlist on our YouTube channel with all of those events. All the events go up there as they're completed. Today we're celebrating marine animals. We started the morning with Callie learning about sea turtles. Then we had Popey come and join us, and we talked about penguins. And this event's going to be a lot of fun. We're bringing in Octonation, who's also helping us with an amazing drawing contest we've done with classrooms across North America. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entries. We've picked some winners for the categories, which was so hard to do, and we're going to share some of those a little bit later. I do want to remind everybody to head to exploringbytheseat.com/Ocean Week, find all the events that we have coming up, and of course, all the details you need to register and tune in to those live events. So let's get to the Octo action. We've got Chelsea Bennice joining us today. She's based out of South Florida, where she gets to spend her time under the sea in Octopus's gardens. So over 1,000 hours spent underwater studying Florida octopuses has earned her the nickname Octogirl. So she uses this to her advantage to share her underwater photography, videography featuring octopuses on social media. She uses media like video and images to share her research and show her passion for octopuses and marine conservation. So let's bring Chelsea in live with us right now. Hey, Chelsea, how are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. We're absolutely thrilled to have you joining us. We had some more of the crew from Octonation with us a couple weeks ago to launch the photo contest, to draw with students. We learned about octopus superpowers, and now we're so excited to learn about some of the cool research you get to do.
Great. Sounds good.
All right. We'll let you take over for a little bit, get that screen share going. I'm going to pull a Kahoot quiz together behind the scenes, and then we're going to have a little interactive quiz with the students before we take some questions. It's going to be great. All right. I see it there, Chelsea. The floor is yours.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here to talk everything about octopuses and my octopus research for World Oceans Week. So let's get started and dive right in. I'm going to take everyone on a virtual field trip to my study site. So I'm based out of South Florida, where I do my octopus research. And as you notice, is that zoomed in, my research is in a lagoon. So that's separated from the ocean by a small piece or narrow piece of land, but it's still connected to the ocean. So this shallow body of water allows me clear visibility and our first octopus on that research dive. We fast forward to a night dive, we see another octopus out foraging during the nighttime. And you might have noticed that these two octopuses, they look a little bit different. And so there's many species of octopus and many species of octopus in Florida. So I focus on two species of octopus for my research. One of them is called the Atlantic longarm octopus, and its scientific name or Latin name is Macrotripus diphilippi. So that fancy name scientists use to communicate with each other so we know what species or what type of octopus we're talking about. The other animal that you saw second in the video is the common octopus, or Octopus vulgaris. And so in this South Florida lagoon, these animals, they live right next to each other. They're underwater neighbors. And so the big research question is to figure out, well, how are these two species coexisting and not fighting for resources? And so before we jump into that, I'm going to give you a little bit more information on these two species and how to identify an octopus. And so usually when scientists talk to each other about how big or small an octopus is, you can talk about the weight of the animal, or you can refer to its mantle length. And that's kind of shown here by this bracket and what we call ML. So that's just short for mantle length. And so we have the head of the octopus is where the eyes and the brain are located, and behind the head is the mantle. And so that's the sac that's really important. It has all the important organs like the hearts, the gills, the stomach, the ink sac. And so we usually measure the mantle length to talk about if this animal is small, medium, or large. For Atlantic longarm octopus, it's a relatively small animal. Its mantle length when it's an adult is about 2 to 3 inches long, and that's it. Its arms are super long, just like the name says, the longarm octopus. The arms are 4 to 7 times its mantle length. For the common octopus, it gets to be a medium to large size animal, and its mantle length can be 7 to 8 inches or larger. Its arms are a little bit shorter. They're shorter than the Atlantic long arms. As you can see in this picture as well, they're more robust or thicker than the Atlantic longarm octopus. So we use these key characteristics to help us identify what species it is. And so to get at what species it is and what resources they use, we ask a lot of questions of how they can coexist with each other. So if we break this down into a lot of questions, we want to know for each species, where do they live? What's their distribution in South Florida, specifically the lagoon? What habitats are they associated with? So for octopus homes, we like to call them their dens. Do they make their dens out of sand, rock, rubble, or structure? Their activity periods. When does the octopus come out to feed? So these two animals may have different activity times. They may be feeding at different times of the day to avoid each other. That may be one way of coexisting. They may have different diets. So we need to look at what each species is eating. And so what was really great about this research project and what I love about octopus research is the field work. I love being in the field, underwater, and scuba diving. As you can see here, this is a zoomed in image of my study site. It's called Blue Heron Bridge, Phil Foster Park. That's part of the lagoon, shown right here by the star in South Florida. And so what I'll do is I'll drive inside the park, I'll gear up with all my scuba gear, my dive flag I have to carry for safety, and then I'll search for octopuses. So I'll swim up and down this area that you can see is outlined in white. So if you were to swim or follow that line all the way around the study site, that would be about a 1 mile swim. So a lot of swimming to search for octopus. Once I find an octopus, I then ascend or swim up to my dive float and I record the location. So I'm using GPS, just like if you were to use your phone to get to a new destination, we can use the GPS device. And so right here is my GPS device that I have in my float. I push a button, it records the location of that octopus. So I did this for over 3 years, spent over 370 hours underwater. So all the green marks are locations where I found the common octopus, and all the pink marks are all the locations where I found the Atlantic longarm octopus. So you can see that they are truly underwater neighbors, living really close to each other, sometimes within 3 feet of each other. And I thought, well, maybe they're just here at different times of the year, and that's why they can live in the same area, because they're really not coming in contact with each other. So what I did is I took all this information that you see on the map, and I kind of broke it up into seasonal categories, winter, spring, summer, and fall. And I promise this is the only graph I'm going to show in the presentation. The rest of it is really cool video and images, but I wanted to show you this because it's really cool to see the results and what scientists really look forward to. So you can see that along here, this shows the number of octopus that I found during each season. So in winter, there are very few octopus of each species. So that solid line is the Atlantic longarm, the dotted line is the common octopus. But as we get to spring, we see a peak in octopus abundance of both species. They're still there in the lagoon during the summertime, and then I don't see very many in the fall. So I like to term the springtime octo season, and that's when I do a lot of my research. So right now into the summer is prime time to see octopus in this South Florida lagoon. So this answers part of the big research story. So we know that they're underwater neighbors, they live really close to each other, and they're actually there at the same time of the year. Well, how are they coexisting and not competing for resources? So we move to the next question, looking at their habitat association or what they're using to make their homes. Remember that I'm calling that the den. So remember, we look at this map. All of these tiny dots are octopuses living right next to each other. And to figure out what types of substrate that they're using to make their dens, I take photos of their dens. And so here's me underwater. And this is a PVC pipe square that scientists call a quadrat. So I know the area of that square and I can take a photo of it and I can analyze and calculate the percentage of sand that's in that square, the percentage of rock and rubble that's in that square. So to see this in action, if I take a photo directly over that, we see that there's a tiny little octopus right there. And that's what the den home looks like. Then fast forward, I move my quadrat around that octopus to look at the surrounding habitat. So 9 photos for each octopus that I found to figure out which each species uses to make its home. And so you see that the octopuses, they're able to live really close to each other and be underwater neighbors because they use different types of homes. You can see that the common octopus right here uses rock, rubble, and structure. The Atlantic longarm octopus, it's a very specialized octopus. It's a sand-dwelling species. And what it does with those really long arms is it uses it to basically make a tunnel and about let's say about a foot or 12 inches tunnel, and it will shoot its body and its arms inside that home and live in the sand. So if we move, remember, you're going to get very familiar with this research map. If you remember Blue Heron Bridge, these circles represent different types of habitat. So you can see, or what we scientists say, is that this is a very patchy environment. And since we have different patches of substrate in this area, so we have rock, rubble, algae, sand in this area, these two species are able to coexist. So they can live right next to each other because they use different substrates to make their home. And so we're starting to answer or check each box, on our big research question. However, usually animals, they use or they partition multiple resources to help them coexist in the same environment. And so now we're going to look at the activity periods, or what times of the day the octopus comes out to forage and feed. And so to do this and answer this big science question is that you can't pick when you're out in the field or when you're recording the octopus to figure out what time of the day it comes out to feed. You have to know what the octopus is doing 24 hours. And I don't know about you, but I like my sleep. And I would like to be in my bed sleeping at 3 a.m. I love diving, but I don't know if I really want to dive at 3 a.m. So what we did is we actually built a 24-hour camera to monitor the octopus's activity time. And we call this the Octopus Monitoring Gadget, or the OMG. And what this is it's a GoPro camera right in front, as you can see right here, where my mouse is circling it up here in the image. A red LED light for nighttime footage, and a large external battery. So usually GoPros have about 2 hours of recording time, and I want to do 24 hours. So I'm using this external battery to make sure that the GoPro stays powered for the full 24 hours. So of course, you've got to have your octopus, and then you set down the camera. And so to see this in action, we went out in the field. This is actually the first video of the OMG. There's my dive buddy. Always dive with a buddy for safety. There's an octopus in that structure. And here it is. The OMG worked. It was a big success. This animal is a common octopus, and it leaves right before excuse me, right before midnight. And it's out foraging and feeding. You can see that the arms are kind of moving all around the bottom. So this is called speculative bottom searching. And you can see as soon as it kind of pulls that arm underneath its body, similar to an elephant's trunk, And that's where it puts its food. Its mouth is located under its arms. Again, this animal leaves shortly after midnight. I'm going to fast forward 72 minutes so you don't have to watch all that video. And the octopus makes a grand entrance back in over its den. So I did this several times. I deployed the OMG for the common octopus, and I also had to deploy it several times for the Atlantic longarm. Remember, so I can figure out the activity time for each species. And so I looked at over 1,000 hours of octopus video, and I got a lot of extra cool footage that I'll show you guys later on. But what we found is that the octopuses search for food at different times of the day. The common octopus is a nocturnal species. It's foraging during the nighttime. Its peak activity when it was out of its den was around 10 p.m. And the Atlantic longarm is a diurnal species, being active during the daytime with its peak activity at 1 p.m. So, although these two animals are living right next to each other, they come out at different times of the day to avoid running into each other. So we're getting at the story. But we've got one more question about what do they eat? Are they eating the same type of food? So they could be coming out at different times of the day, but eating the same thing. Or maybe they're also eating different things, again, to lessen that competition for resources so they both can live in the South Florida lagoon. And so what's really cool about figuring out octopus diets is that you can use different methods to figure out what they're eating. And so one common method that is used is collecting their prey remains. So usually octopuses eat prey items that have a hard shell. This could be an exoskeleton of a crab, or it could be like a clam shell. And so usually it leaves those prey remains around its den for shelter. So here's the magic science hand or my hand doing research and kind of laying out all these different shells or prey remains from the octopus's den. What I'm doing is I'm pulling them out, I'm taking photos of them so then I can ID them later to figure out what exactly the octopus is eating. Octopus wasn't really a fan of this because I was messing up its home decor or its den, and said, if you're gonna mess with my shells, well then I'm gonna mess with your camera. And here you can see the octopuses can be very curious animals. This octopus is checking out my camera. So here you can see the size of the octopus. It's a relatively small to medium-sized animal, this common octopus. The mantle length, remember that sac behind its head, for this animal was probably 5 to 6 inches long. So we probably have a juvenile or subadult octopus, common octopus here. But after that, the octopus said, okay, you returned my shells, I'm happy. And of course, I was happy because the scientists got data. And so that's great if the octopus leaves prey remains around its den. However, I found out that the Atlantic longarm octopus does not leave prey remains around its den. So remember, this is a sand-dwelling animal. So it's living in a sandy environment with really nothing else around it. So if this octopus were to leave prey remains around its sandy opening, it may actually attract predators because predators know something's living in that home. So what this octopus does is it eats on the go or eats on the swim. And so I had to follow this animal on foraging events. And here it is, you can see it's using its long arms and it's positioning its arms around its body, kind of like a flatfish or a flounder. So this animal is known for flounder mimicry. And you can see it sort of does it there. So as it's spreading its arms out, it's touching and tasting the environment. Right there, there's a crab that jumps out from that algae. The octopus scoops it up with its suckers. And usually, depending on the prey size, the animal will actually hold that prey item under its arms and will continue searching. There it is, another crab that this octopus feels with its suckers and then captures that prey item as well. So I was able to figure out what this animal is eating, not by its den, but by actually following this animal on foraging events, which was really cool. And this was actually the first study that looked at the diet of this animal. And so we see that the animals are eating the same things. However, they do have favorite foods, just like we might. And so for the common octopus on the left side of your screen, it ate bivalves like clams, gastropods like conchs, and crustaceans like crabs. However, it mostly ate the bivalve as you see in this picture. When I look at the Atlantic longarm octopus, this animal ate exclusively crustaceans, crabs, as you can see here. So right here, it might be kind of hard to tell, but this is the octopus's eye. It's actually down in its den, that sand hole, and it's pulling this shame-faced crab down into its den. So it's got a pretty tasty meal. So we have one octopus, the common octopus, eating eating bivalves like a clam, and this other one is eating crab. So again, they're feeding on different things to allow them to coexist in this lagoon. And what's really cool about octopuses is their foraging and feeding behaviors. And so I'm very interested in animal behavior. And so when an octopus is out of its den, you can see it's very squishy. It doesn't have an external shell, so it's vulnerable to predators. So it needs to make sure that it is on the lookout for predators and on the lookout for prey. And so how it does this is with its really cool 360-degree or panoramic vision. You can see that octopus has, its eyes are actually positioned on the side of their heads and kind of up on stalks. They also have a horizontal pupil. So unlike us, we have a circular pupil. The octopus has a rectangular pupil. So with the rectangular pupil and the position of their eyes, it allows them to get a panoramic view of their environment. So they know, they look around, they say, okay, the area is clear of predators, and I'm gonna go out and forage and find some food. While they're also out foraging for food, they can smell chemicals in the water and maybe prey items like a crab that may be somewhere in the area. And so octopus may look a little silly if it had a nose like we do. Instead of having a nose, what it does is it has these tiny little dimples in its skin, kind of on the outside of its mantle, that pick up those chemical cues in the water and allow the octopus to smell if maybe there's a crab in the area. And also, can't forget about the touch and the taste of the suckers. So octopus arms and suckers are very important for the animal, sensing their environment. As you can see, that it helps them walk. The arms and the suckers, it helps them attach to rocks and structures. So if you think of suckers, you think of suction cups. However, it also helps them touch and taste their environment, so they can figure out if something is a rock versus a crab with their tasting senses, and then if they should keep a hold of that item, such as this really massive crab that you see in the picture. So you might be wondering, what exactly am I looking at? Well, this animal is actually an upside down swimming crab right here. So that's one of its legs. That's a really big claw, and that's the underside of the crab. And so what's really cool is that octopuses are super strong animals, basically a ball of protein, and they have 200 suckers on each arm. So they're really strong. So they can actually grab onto and hold prey items much larger, as you can see here, much larger than themselves. And then they can start to break down and eat that animal. And so they have different methods of feeding. So as you saw from the previous picture, this animal is holding onto the crab with all the suckers that I just mentioned. In the center, we call it the arm crown, and in the center of that is the octopus's mouth. And so the octopus has a mouth with lips around it, and inside that mouth is a beak, very similar to the bird beak. So if we can just move on to the right for this diagram. So this is what was shown in the picture. And if we zoom in, you see the beak right over here. So it has this hard beak that will break exoskeletons or shells so the animal can eat the clam or the crab that's inside. And the octopus has to break down its food really, really, really good. And to do that, it also uses this really specialized tongue called a radula. So the radula is like a ribbon tongue that has really tiny teeth along it. And so these tiny teeth help shred the crab or clam meat right here. However, if that doesn't do the trick and the octopus cannot crack open or break the shell of the animal that it's eating, it's got another strategy that it uses. And so I'll show that right here. And so what the octopus has, my mouse is going around it. It's called the salivary papilla. We're just going to call it the octopus drill. Much easier. And so what this animal will do is it will drill a hole in the shell or the exoskeleton of the animal. After it drills that hole with the octopus drill, it actually delivers saliva. So here's the drill, and this is the little tube that delivers the saliva. That saliva is very, very special. Octopus saliva has enzymes and toxins. So these toxins paralyze the prey so it can't get away, and then the enzymes help digest and break down that prey item. And so to kind of give you an idea of this, the octopus is scooping up that clam. It's too hard to break. The octopus holds in onto it, drills a hole, injects the venom. That venom, those toxins, paralyze the animal's muscle. So the animal falls open and the octopus can scoop out the good stuff inside. And so when I was collecting prey items, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to find any drill holes. So after collecting these prey items, I looked for drill holes and I measured the thickness of the shells. And so as you can see here, I'm going to circle it for you. We see an octopus drill hole right here. If we flip that clam over right here, it might be hard to notice, but there's kind of a smooth indentation area. So there's the hole. I'm going to circle it in gray. You see, that's where the clam's muscle is attached to its shell. So the octopus, from learning, it has a strategy of where to inject that venom. So they're very, very smart animals. It injects that venom in a strategic place where the muscle is. And so it paralyzes the animal very quickly. So the clam falls open and the octopus scoops out the food. As you can see here, in very thin shells, the octopus doesn't need to drill a hole. But if the shell is thick, the octopus drills the hole. I looked at this for gastropods. So this is a conch shell you're looking at. And so I looked at if different gastropods have an operculum. So the operculum is kind of like a trap door. So if a snail or a conch is scared or protecting itself from predators, it will hide inside the shell and it will have a hard trap door covering this area. So there was no drill hole when there was no trap door because the octopus could just go in with its arm and pull out the animal. But if it did have an operculum like this conch and it had a trap door, the octopus can't get in. So the octopus, being smart, drills a hole where the muscles attached, paralyzes the animal, and scoops it out. Last are looking at crabs. So the octopus doesn't get pinched. The octopus will actually drill a hole in crab claws and paralyze them so the crab doesn't pinch the octopus. So very smart animals. So after learning about all their behaviors and how they coexist in this lagoon, we have a recap looking at their neighbors. They live right next to each other. They can live right next to each other because they live in, the common octopus is in a rocky home. The Atlantic longarm is in a sandy home. They feed at different times of the day, so they're avoiding each other as well. And they're also eating different food items and using these different strategies to find these food items and to avoid predators. And why this is so important is because they serve in many, many food webs. So we like to think of octopuses in the middle of food webs. So they're foraging on those lower levels in the food web, the different levels such as the clam and the crab right here. So they're feeding on those animals. However, they serve as a really important food source for our apex predators in many food webs, such as diving marine birds, sharks, marine mammals, other large fish. And so it's really important to know areas that we need to protect for octopuses to coexist and live in so we can protect food webs as a whole. And so what was also really cool about this research is that I learned a lot about octopuses and their behaviors over a 4-year period. And this opened the door to many research questions. So I answered a few, but after that, I thought of tons of more research questions. And some of those research questions have to do with species identification, making sure that we identify the correct animal in different geographical locations, which is tricky because I'm sure you're aware of that octopuses can change color and color patterns. So it's important to understand the very special color patterns that each species have. So we as scientists can identify them to help protect octopuses. We're also looking at octopuses for arm flexibility. So we look at nature for inspiration. So we're looking at octopuses and how they move their arms. Since they have no bones, they pretty much have an infinite number of degrees of freedom in how they can move their arms. So we're looking at this as inspiration for soft robotics. And what I'm going to go into next is looking at the skin microbiome. So looking at the bacteria on the octopus's skin, because we want to make sure that octopuses stay healthy. And so it's known that bacteria, they play a key role in cephalopod lifestyles. So cephalopod is a group of animals that octopuses belong to and their relatives, like squid, cuttlefish, and nautilus. And so just some examples of what's already known about bacteria and the role that they play with different cephalopods, for example, is the bob-tailed squid. And so the bob-tailed squid and bacteria, they have a symbiotic relationship. So you'll see here that these two animals are living together and they're actually both benefiting from this relationship. So the bob-tailed squid is known to have a light organ. It has a light organ in the back of its mantle area. And that light organ, just like the name, it produces light and allows the animal to glow. And so it's not the squid that really does this. It's actually the bacteria that live inside the light organ that do that. So the bacteria have a home, they're protected, and then the squid gets to light up from the bacteria. And this is important because that light actually produces a really special type of camouflage called counter illumination. Very fancy name. So producing this light, if there's predators from below, it actually camouflages the animal at night. So the bob-tailed squid is protected by this camouflage. Another example of bacteria playing a really important role in an octopus's lifestyle is the blue-ringed octopus right here. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this species, living in the Indo-Pacific area, having around 50 to 60 blue rings, depending on the species. There's about 4 species of blue-ringed octopuses that have been identified. And so, like I mentioned before, all octopuses have this venom or toxin in their saliva. However, the blue-ringed octopus has another toxin called tetrodotoxin or TTX. And this toxin is actually produced by a bacteria that lives in the animal's salivary gland, or lives in it, the saliva. So it has a very deadly toxin that kills its prey and is very, very deadly to humans as well. And so the octopus uses this for protection from predators. And so what it isn't really known about bacteria is the role that bacteria play on octopus's skin. And that's where my project comes in. And what I'm looking at is if there is special bacteria living on the octopus's skin, called the microbiome, that protect it from infection to allow octopuses to be healthy. So how do you collect bacteria? So as you can see here, I'm actually using, they look like Q-tips. They're called swabs. And I'm swabbing the octopus's mantle. The mantle has mucus on it, and within the mucus, we think that's where the bacteria are living. So I'm trying to get a good swab. The octopus is just hanging out. It reminds me if you're petting your dog or your cat and they really like it. The octopus is just hanging out, letting me swab. And as soon as I'm done swabbing the octopus, I put those swabs into a transfer tube. And the reason I was doing that was to try to be least invasive as possible, trying to keep the animal in the water and not take it out of the water back to the lab to swab. However, what you learn in science is that not everything goes right the first time, and that's okay. You learn from your experiences, and through trial and error, you figure out the best scientific methods to do for your research project. And so I thought about, well, how can I keep the octopus in the field and just remove them temporarily from the water? And that's when the floating lab came into place. So what I designed is a floating lab, and it also serves as my dye flag right here, remember, for safety. So a floating lab with a dye flag. And what this is a removable basket with holes in it. So I bring this basket underwater, I collect the octopus, and I sit it in this area right here in the floating lab. That allows seawater to get to the octopus. So while I'm getting ready, the octopus is in a holding tank with fresh seawater. I then go to my holding containers over here. I take out my swab and I swab the octopus. After I'm done swabbing the octopus, I then release it to the wild. I also have other containers where I collect sediment samples and also water samples. So I can compare bacteria in the water, in the sediment, and also in the octopus. So I can see if I have unique bacteria just on the octopus. So I know you're all ready for the big reveal about the floating lab and how I did it myself. And here it is. So a very glorified diagram, but here it is in person. And what I really like about science, not just being in the field, is that you get to be creative, innovative, solve problems, use your thinking skills, and to figure out, well, I'm going to be in the water, I'm going to be in salt water, how can I make a floating lab that doesn't cost that much money, that can withstand all of the environmental factors? So what I did is I bought a $5 boogie board, floats just fine, cut out an area for my basket, and reduce, reuse, recycle. I use takeout containers to hold my equipment. And so I think we're all ready to see the floating lab in action. So this is Project Swab, swabbing octopus bellies. Remember, I'm swabbing the mantle. I like to call this the belly because that's where all the organs are located. So here I am, I'm actually scooping up an octopus, putting them inside the basket. Again, my study site is relatively shallow, so I'm able to ascend to my floating lab very safely, as you can see right at the top. There it is. So there's my floating lab. My dive buddy is holding the flag, watching for me. And as I'm at the surface, I'm checking to make sure, all right, the octopus is in there. It's just hanging out. I get ready. When I get ready, and here are my swabs sticking out. I get my swabs. As soon as I'm ready, I drain the water. I'm swabbing the octopus. Once I'm done, this doesn't take very long, like 30 seconds, the octopus is then released back into the wild where I found it. Here I am releasing that octopus. And as you can see, pay attention to that quick camouflage. It's on a sandy environment, quickly changes that color to be under that rock, that darker shade. Just remembering that octopuses can change their color, their texture in under 1 second. So they are the masters of disguise. And so I just wanted to wrap up with what I did and relay the message to all of you, is that turning your passion into a career. As you can see that my passion is the ocean conservation, and animal behavior, understanding the resources animals need and how we can keep them healthy. And I do that through scientific diving, my research, and also communication, reaching out to everyone to tell them about what I have found. However, through my career, I've worked with a bunch of really cool people that are also ocean advocates inspired by the ocean, but they're not necessarily scientists. And that's okay. If you're passionate about the ocean, there are many careers that you can take to be involved in protecting the ocean. As you can see here, I've done films or documentaries with teens, so you can be a nature videographer or photographer and tell your story. If you want to help scientists figure out how to answer a research question, maybe you're an ocean engineer or a mechanical engineer that develops underwater drones, ROVs, or these 24-hour cameras. I wouldn't have been able to develop without the help of an engineer. Also, scientific illustrators. And I think maybe some of you, if you haven't yet, check out How to Draw an Octopus by Octo Nation's creative director, Chris Adams. I can't draw. He definitely can. And we have scientific illustrators that do a wonderful job communicating the science. We have animal behavior here, and we need to be able to communicate that in a very clear and beautiful way. So you can be a scientific illustrator. You may just want to communicate the science. So I've worked with journalists and kind of getting my message out to the public. So you could be a science journalist. Or of course, if you want to be a scientist, go for it. You can be a scientist, or you can help out with scientific research, and you could be a dive safety officer. So I just want to relay the message to you to definitely go out, explore different careers, and get involved. Not just for World Ocean Week, but all around the year. And with that, I'll take any questions.
All right, Chelsea, awesome. We've had the whole kind of gambit over these lessons, from learning about octopus superpowers to how to draw them, and now really diving into some research and some really cool features and habits of the octopus. Very, very cool. We're going to jump into a Kahoot quiz. I pulled together a little Kahoot quiz while you were presenting. So I'm going to share a few links here to help people get started. There we go. So kahoot.it is where you want to head. And then it's going to ask you for a PIN number. And I'm going to share my screen. You can probably hear the music in the background already. The quiz is queued up. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get that number going here. So it's 815-3435. If you put that in when it asks you for the PIN number. We'll give a few seconds to get some students in, but essentially it's going to be 20 seconds per question. There's some true and false, there's some multiple choice. You get the answer right, you get some points. You get it right, but you do it really quick, you get lots of points. If you get it wrong, even if you do it really quickly, we still got no points for you. So you gotta get the answer right, and you have to get it as quick as you can. So we've already got almost 100 students entered the quiz so far. Let's give it another few seconds. And then we'll get things started. We'll take a few questions, and then we'll wrap up by announcing the winners of the octopus drawing contest. So not a bad way to wrap up. All right, students still coming in really fast. Lots of students. Ooh, I saw the rapid octopus. So it's on auto name. Everyone gets an animal name. And I just saw the rapid octopus. So we'll wish them some luck there. All right, almost 200 students in with us. We'll give it another maybe 10 seconds, then we're going to go live with this quiz. All right, let's go for it. Here we go. 3 seconds till the first question. Get your clicking fingers ready, or if you're yelling out the answers to your teacher at the front, that's cool too. So question 1. Octopus are often measured by the size of is it their eyes, their heart, their mantle, or their suckers? So Chelsea at the beginning talked about an important measurement. Who remembers? Eyes, heart, mantle, or suckers? A couple seconds there. All right, good job.
All right.
Yeah, most went with mantle. Very cool. And the noble duck is holding down first place, but the noble bear is right in behind. Let's jump to our next question, a little true and false action. The Atlantic long-armed octopus arms are 4 to 7 times its mantle length.
Ooh,
is that true or is that false? Answers coming in nice and fast. It's big wordy. That's really, really wordy. And I left the O out of octopus while I was typing really fast. But
that's okay.
I think you get the gist of it. All right. Good job, crew. That's true. 47 times their mantle length, and quite possibly why they have that long arm in their name. Happy Buffalo has snatched the lead. Let's go on to our third question. An octopus home is called a den, a house, a nest, or a burrow. This came up a couple times. Definitely heard Chelsea say it a few times.
No, I said it a few times, probably more than a few.
So
Let's
I
see
think
if
we're
I
going
got
to
it.
get a high percentage of high answers here. I think I'm feeling good. All right. Good job, crew. The den. The noble duck is battling back. Let's jump into another true and false. Chelsea has looked at 500 hours of octopus video. So her research, she's looked at 500 hours of octopus video. Is that true or is that false? 500 hours. Okay, a little split, but most went with no. It's actually about 1,000 hours. Wow, that's a lot of video, Chelsea.
Mm-hmm. At least I got to use the fast forward button a little bit.
Yeah, the aquatic koala. That's interesting. I've never heard of an aquatic koala, but they are now in the lead. And let's see what happens on our final question. Octopus can see 180 degrees, 360 degrees. They can't see at all, or 90 degrees. How good is that octopus vision? Answers flying in. You got about 3 seconds to lock something in. All right, 360 degrees. Good job, crew.
Nice.
Let's see that podium. Third place, the silver lion. In second, we've got the aquatic koala. And the Rocky Wolf coming in right at the end to take that top spot on the podium. Good stuff, everyone.
Good job.
All right. Awesome, Chelsea. They were in. They were locked right in. Okay, Q&A time. Let's get it happening. We're going to start with Mr. Hancock's crew. They're hanging out with us today. Where are they hanging out from? Mr. Hancock's crew. There it is, in Georgetown. So joining us in Canada.
Ooh.
Hey, Mr. Hancock.
Hey, we're up here in Ontario, Canada. We were wondering, do you often see the same octopuses? And if so, have you formed kind of like a relationship? Do they recognize you? I saw the one come after your camera. What's that like? Are they like a pet in a sense? Have they gotten to know you?
Yes, they definitely can recognize individuals. That's been shown in the lab with different lab techs or researchers will come in and they'll know individuals. And there's been cases where an octopus will maybe like one researcher and then the other one it will squirt water at. So they can recognize individuals. In my work, since I was trying to cover as much space and ground as I could, I didn't do too much time checking on the same octopus. But they definitely can recognize individuals from other researchers.
All right. Very cool. Great question. Let's head to Virginia. Miss Marquardt's crew is joining us in Virginia. How are we doing today?
Hi.
Hello.
What is the largest octopus you have discovered? Like you've seen in person.
Oh, okay. That I've seen in person. I would say it was probably the Caribbean reef octopus, which I didn't show in this presentation. It looks very similar to the common. However, the Caribbean reef octopus also has this bluish green iridescent color. It's a really pretty animal. And it was probably, I would say it was probably bigger than a big beach ball. With its arm webbing and everything, definitely bigger than a beach ball. But the largest octopus is the giant Pacific octopus. And so that's in the Pacific Ocean, so I don't see that in the Atlantic Ocean. But that animal is much larger than me, over 5 feet, and it can weigh, an average weight is around 300 pounds. It's a very large animal. So I deal with much smaller animals at my study location.
All right, great question. Thanks, Virginia. All right, shifting over back to Canada, we got Madame Tonasuki's class, some 5th graders hanging out with us.
What's your favorite octopus to research?
Ooh, my favorite octopus to research. I would say right now it's the Atlantic longarm octopus. Just because we know so very little about it, which is crazy because this animal, it lives in shallow water. So it's very accessible. Sometimes I see it in 3 feet of water, up to maybe 10 to 15 feet of water. But since it can make those tunnels, it's really hard to find. So a lot of scientists haven't been able to find it. So I work in a very special location where I'm able to discover new behaviors about this animal. And it's super long arms, and it has some really neat behaviors as well. Like it raises its mantle completely vertical, and we really don't know why it does that. So right now, that's my favorite animal.
All right, great question. 4th graders in Virginia with Mrs. Karn's class. How are we doing?
That looks like a class.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Brian. How do octopuses produce ink?
How do they produce ink? Did I hear that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So they have inside their mantle, that sac that I was talking about, they have their ink sac. So ink is made up of melanin and mucus. So a lot of mucus and melanin, a dark pigment. And what they'll do is if they need to jet away or scare a predator, that ink, they will push it out of their siphon or their funnel. So you probably saw in pictures, there was kind of like that tube or that snorkel looking structure on the octopus. That's called its funnel. And that's where it shoots ink out of. So depending on how much mucus they want to send out their funnel, it can kind of be like a smoke screen or cloud and kind of just go in front of the predator and disappear. Or they can produce a very concentrated mucus ink ball, and it's called a special name called a pseudomorph. So it's supposed to kind of look like an octopus, so the predator is distracted and looks at that while the octopus jets away. I want to see if maybe I can share my screen so I can show everyone the funnel or the siphon.
Sure.
Ooh, here we go. This is a good picture. Hold on. Let me bring my screen, my share. There we go. All right, can everyone see this?
Yeah, we see your screen.
Ooh, I'm just zooming in. So right here, I'm circling, that's the siphon or the funnel. Right there in the common octopus, and of course it's smaller animal, the Atlantic longarm. So they can push water out of their siphon for jet propulsion to get away. They push ink out their siphon to scare, deter predators, and they also expel waste, or they poop out of their siphon. So their poop actually looks like silly string. It's pink and really stringy.
Okay, very cool. Leesburg, we've got to go to Leesburg with some 4th graders hanging out with Mrs. Moore. There they are.
All right. Hi. Yeah. We had 3 friends with about the same question, so you guys can come up and ask your question.
When and why did you start studying octopus?
I think I started studying octopus over 10 years ago. And so, yeah, I know it's been a really long time. So I actually started studying cuttlefish first. So after I graduated high school, I went to college and got my bachelor's degree. And then I did a couple marine science internships. And I worked in the marine biological laboratory in Woods Hole doing cuttlefish camouflage behavior and squid behavior. So I did cuttlefish and squid behavior research, and then I went on and I did octopus research. So I've always been fascinated in animal behavior and how animal behavior relates to their environment. And I'd have to say the octopus probably has by far the coolest behavior to study. So, and they're also a very important animal for our marine ecosystem. So I decided to stick with the octopus.
All right, very cool. Okay, Mrs. Lascombe's crew, thanks for being so patient. We're ready for you.
Hello.
Grab the mic for me. There we go.
Have you ever found a hurt octopus?
I actually have, and so mention octopuses. They have a lot of predators, a lot of fish like eels, diving marine birds, sharks, and so a lot of the time, fish will actually follow the octopus on foraging events, and sometimes they'll nip at the octopus's arm. And so I've seen octopuses with missing arms. Octopuses also blindly reach their arms into holes where a crab may be living. So sometimes a crab snaps at the octopus's arms. So it's common to find an octopus with maybe a missing arm tip, but they're able to regrow their arms. So they're okay. Everything's good. So that's usually when I've seen like an injured octopus like that.
All right. Thanks for the question. So I want to grab one from YouTube before we unveil the contest winner. So Mrs. Matsuba's class, Besson, would like to know, do octopuses ever come to the surface?
Yes, they do. So it depends on the type or the species of octopus. The two that I study, and you could probably see in the films, they're benthic animals living on the bottom. So they're usually just crawling around the bottom. However, they may come to the surface if they're trying to escape a predator or if they're trying to chase a prey item. So they can actually swim up into the water column to get away from the predator, or they may be chasing a swimming crab. So I've seen them swim up chasing a crab and then swim back down. So the benthic animals can do that. Other species of octopus may be at the surface or near the surface because that's where they live, like open water species like the blanket octopus you may see in, usually it's deeper waters, but they can come to the surface. Also, the paper nautilus, despite the common name, is an octopus. They'll create a shell, and that shell actually is where they brood their eggs, and they can live near the surface as well.
All right, very cool. Well, we are here. We are at the big moment. It was not easy. We had two events a few weeks ago. One where Warren from Octonation taught us about octopus superpowers. Then a couple days later, Chris joined us, and he's an amazing illustrator. And we had a nice crash course in drawing an octopus. Some students put together some great stuff during the event. And then students had a few weeks to get their submissions into us. And we had hundreds and hundreds of submissions. I'd say somewhere between 400 to 500 submissions from classrooms. So Warren and I, it was not easy to decide who we declare the winner because there were so many amazing images. There were three categories. There was the color category, a black and white category, and then a whimsical. So I'm going to tuck Chelsea and I backstage just for a second. I want to show this off for a sec. So that is a very whimsical looking octopus. That is the Explorers Club, especially designed by Chris for this week, this World Ocean Week. It is such a cool octopus carrying the flag, a whole bunch of gear like a sextant and telescope and map bags. Very busy, that octopus, out to explore and find what's going on. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me for a moment while it shares, and I'll share the first, second, third for each category. Most of them, I know the full names. A few of them were a little hard to read, so I'll have to contact the teacher to make sure that I have the right name. And I'm not going to give the full names live anyways, but let's get this shared and let's take a look. So it's going to pop up right away. So first prize in our black and white category, we've got this beautiful, beautiful image here. I think it's a mimic.
Wow.
And that is just a really cool.
That's amazing.
Beautiful sketch. That is Amanda from Mrs. Dennison's class. So very, very cool. I love that one. Yeah, very cool. Let's go to our second place. we had Mila,
Ooh.
Miss Fromm's 5th graders. So Mila, thank you for that. Beautiful black and white, very soft image. I like that one.
Mhm.
And finally, we had Eliana with her image. And Eliana, where were you from? Mrs. Swangstew's class. So I will reach out to your teachers and we
You're
will figure out what
beautiful.
to do from
Amazing
there.
job.
Yeah, very cool images. Okay, let's move on to our color action. So first, we had this beautiful image. This is from Miss Steinhoff's crew. Unfortunately, the name, I didn't see it on the picture, so I'll have to ask Mrs. Steinhoff, and we will get that sorted out. In second place, we have another nice, colorful one here from
Very
Owen.
nice.
Owen is in Miss Swangstew's class. And then Eliana with this very cool, using
Look,
a
look at an octopus.
yeah, in Mrs. Capice's class. So I will reach out to your educators. So great job on the color. Now the whimsical. This one was fun, and this one was really hard as well. So many whimsical drawings. Here we
Oh my goodness.
have here princess, treasure, octopus, I guess, and lots of sea life around. So that's a great one. This is, I could be wrong. The name was just cut off at the bottom. I think it's Lucia or Lucha in Mrs. Bassinger's class. Also in Mrs. Bassinger's class, we got this
Wow.
here. And the name, I think it's there at the side, but it's really, really hard to read. I'm not going to guess. It might be Elise, but we'll check that out. And finally, we've got this cool dude here ready.
Love it.
To head out in the rain, geared up. And this is Mrs. Go and Look's crew, and this was Mike. So very, very cool. I think it was Mike. That's kind of what I see down at the bottom. I could be wrong. But great work, everybody. I'll reach out to everybody's teachers. You guys did such a good job and made it just impossible for us, the Explorers Club and Octonation, to make a decision with hundreds and hundreds of amazing drawings. So thank you so much for being part, really, this 3-part series with Octonation, leading right up to today with you, Chelsea, and taking us into the world of octopus research. And it sounds like you're learning a lot, but there's a lot to go, right? Every time you go in the field, you come back with 100 more questions.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, a big shout out to all of our classrooms. Thank you so much for being here live with us today. Our camera classrooms, our YouTube classrooms, thanks for playing along in the Kahoot. Stick to the website, Ocean Week. We will be live at 1 o'clock Eastern this afternoon with Fabian Cousteau. So that's going to be a great event. I think you'll want to be there. You'll enjoy it. Check out the Explorers Club, explorers.org, to learn all about the amazing things at the Explorers Club. If you're in the New York area, come down to the club. There's live events at the club all week long. You can find that in the event section. And of course, Octonation. Head over to Octonation, spend some time in the Octopedia, the largest octopus fan site around. Pretty amazing. And Chelsea, it's been such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I hope we see you at 1 o'clock Eastern with Fabian Cousteau. But for now, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.